My name is Audrey, and I am 32 years old. I stood alone in my wedding dress, staring at rows of empty chairs where my family should have been. 8 months of planning, thousands of dollars spent, and endless hopes of finally being seen. Instead, across town, my sister Vanessa celebrated her engagement, surrounded by everyone who had promised to witness my vows. As Eric and I cut our wedding cake in awkward silence, my phone lit up. A message from my mom, Diana. "We need to talk now." Followed by 39 missed calls. The perfect ending to my not-so-perfect day. If you are watching this from somewhere in your own empty moment, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from. This story might help you more than you know. I grew up in a middle-class suburb of Boston where the houses all looked similar, but what happened inside them varied wildly. Our home on Maple Street had 4 bedrooms, a well-kept lawn, and a secret that everyone knew but nobody discussed. My parents had a favorite child, and it was not me. My sister Vanessa, 3 years younger than me, had the kind of effortless beauty that turns heads and the charisma that keeps attention. Since elementary school, she was the social butterfly, while I was the bookworm. I earned straight A's, joined the debate team, and worked part-time jobs to save for college. Vanessa was the cheerleader who dated the quarterback and got invited to every party. Our differences might have complemented each other in a healthy family, but in ours, they created a hierarchy with crystal-clear rankings. My mother, Diana, a former pageant contestant who became a real estate agent, saw herself in Vanessa. They shared shopping trips, spa days, and whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. My father, Richard, a corporate attorney, showed up to every one of Vanessa's cheerleading events, but consistently missed my academic competitions, citing work emergencies that somehow never coincided with my sister's activities. "Your sister needs more encouragement," my mother would explain when I questioned the disparity. "You are already so self-sufficient, Audrey." Self-sufficient became code for not needing love, attention, or support. I became the family afterthought, the reliable backdrop against which Vanessa's life played out in vivid color. I met Eric during my junior year of college. We shared a literature class, and he noticed me when few others did. At 20 years old, he was the first person who seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts, dreams, and feelings. Our connection grew slowly and steadily over coffee shop study sessions and long walks through campus. 7 years passed before we got engaged. Years filled with building careers, saving money, and creating a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine affection. Through those years, my friendship with Samantha remained my one constant connection to my pre-Eric life. Since 10th grade biology class, we had been inseparable, the kind of friends who finished each other's sentences and knew each other's coffee orders by heart. Samantha was there through every family disappointment, offering her shoulder to cry on when my parents missed my college graduation to attend Vanessa's dance recital, when they forgot my birthday but threw Vanessa a surprise party, when they helped Vanessa with the down payment on her condo but told me to be more financially responsible when I asked for advice on housing. "Your family does not define your worth," Samantha would tell me, her voice fierce with loyalty. "One day they will realize what they have been missing." That hope sustained me through years of slights and oversights. Each time my parents canceled plans with me to attend one of Vanessa's impromptu gatherings, each time they praised her minimal accomplishments while dismissing my substantial ones, I told myself that my wedding would be different. Surely, they would not miss the most important day of my life. Surely, that would be the line they would not cross. I announced my engagement at a Sunday family dinner, the weekly ritual my mother insisted upon to maintain the appearance of familial harmony. Eric had proposed the night before with a modest but beautiful ring that represented months of saving. My hand trembled slightly as I shared our news. "We are thinking about a fall wedding," I said, watching my parents' faces carefully. "October 12th, next year." My mother's reaction was tepid at best. "That is nice, dear. Have you considered a longer engagement? Wedding venues book so far in advance these days." My father barely looked up from his phone. "Congratulations. Will you need financial help? Things are a bit tight with the market fluctuations." Vanessa's reaction, however, caught my attention most sharply. A small, almost imperceptible smile flickered across her face as she heard the date. A smile that made my stomach tighten with apprehension. I dismissed the feeling as paranoia born from years of disappointment. Surely, even Vanessa would not try to overshadow my wedding day. How foolishly optimistic I was. Over the years, I had noticed a pattern. Whenever I had an important event, Vanessa would suddenly have a crisis or celebration that required immediate family attention. My college graduation coincided with her sudden breakup that required my parents' presence to console her. My promotion dinner happened the same evening Vanessa impulsively decided to announce she was moving to a new apartment and needed help immediately. These coincidences occurred with such regularity that Eric had begun to predict them, usually accurately. "Your sister operates on Vanessa's standard time," he once joked, though his eyes remained serious, "where the world revolves around her schedule and everyone else is just living in it." I had hoped, perhaps naively, that my wedding would be sacred ground, off-limits to Vanessa's manipulations. After all, there are certain milestones that transcend sibling rivalry, certain moments that even the most self-centered person would respect. Or so I thought. The stage was set, the players were in position, and the drama that had been building for 32 years was about to reach its climax. I just did not realize how painful the final act would be. The next 8 months passed in a whirlwind of wedding preparations. Eric and I approached planning methodically, balancing our desire for a meaningful ceremony with the practical limitations of our budget. We chose a charming venue by the water, selected a menu that accommodated various dietary restrictions, and spent evenings addressing invitations by hand to save on printing costs. "Your family will be seated here," the venue coordinator explained during our first visit, pointing to the left side of the ceremony space, "and the groom's family will be on the right." I nodded, picturing my parents in the front row, perhaps finally looking at me with the pride I had craved for decades. I imagined Samantha beside me as my maid of honor, helping with my veil and holding my bouquet. For once, I allowed myself to believe that this day would be different, that my family would show up for me, not just physically but emotionally. Initially, everyone seemed enthusiastic. My mother suggested bridal shops, though she always found reasons to reschedule when appointment times arrived. My father promised to taste test caterers but sent his assistant instead. Vanessa agreed to be a bridesmaid with a hug that felt performative rather than genuine. Samantha threw me an engagement party where my family arrived late and left early, but at least they came. 3 months before the wedding, during another Sunday dinner, Vanessa cleared her throat dramatically as dessert was served. "I have an announcement," she said, her voice pitched to command attention. "Jack proposed last night." She thrust her hand forward, displaying a diamond that dwarfed mine. My parents erupted in excitement, my mother actually crying tears of joy that had been noticeably absent at my announcement. "We are thinking of having an engagement party," Vanessa continued, her eyes sliding toward me with calculated precision. "On October 12th. The room went silent for a moment before my mother spoke. "But that is Audrey's wedding date," she said, her tone suggesting she was pointing out a minor scheduling conflict rather than a deliberate act of sabotage. Vanessa's expression shifted into practiced innocence. "Is it? Oh my goodness, I completely forgot, but we have already put a deposit down on the venue." They had a cancellation for that date, and it was the only Saturday they had available this fall. The lie was transparent. No venue had only a single Saturday available, especially one that happened to coincide exactly with her sister's wedding day. But challenging Vanessa directly would only cast me as the jealous sister, the role I had been assigned in our family narrative for years. "Could you change your wedding date, Audrey?" my father suggested, as if postponing a wedding with all its interconnected reservations and arrangements was as simple as rescheduling a dinner. "Your sister's engagement is time-sensitive, but your wedding could happen anytime." The casual cruelty of his words stole my breath. Next to me, Eric's hand tightened around mine, his knuckles white with restrained anger. "Actually, no," I said, finding a firmness in my voice that surprised even me. "Our invitations have gone out. We have paid non-refundable deposits. Our wedding will be on October 12th as planned." Later that night, I confronted Vanessa directly, calling her while Eric sat beside me for moral support. "You knew my wedding date when you planned this," I said, skipping pleasantries. "Why are you doing this?" "Not everything is about you, Audrey," she replied, her voice dripping with a condescension she had perfected over years of being our parents' golden child. "Jack and I want to celebrate our engagement. It is not my fault the only date available happens to be the same as your wedding." "You are asking our family to choose between us," I persisted. "And you know who they will choose." Her laugh was soft but cutting. "If you are so worried about that, maybe your relationship with them is not as strong as you thought. Perhaps you should reflect on why that might be." The call ended with nothing resolved, leaving me shaking with a mixture of rage and despair. I immediately called my parents, hoping they would see through Vanessa's manipulation. "Mom, you cannot possibly be considering missing my wedding for Vanessa's engagement party," I said when my mother answered. Her sigh carried decades of practiced martyrdom. "Audrey, you are putting us in an impossible position. Why must you girls always compete? Cannot you reschedule? Vanessa cannot change her date now, and your sister only gets engaged once." The irony of her statement hung in the air. I was also only getting married once, a fact that seemed to carry no weight with her. "I will not reschedule my wedding," I stated firmly. "I hope you will make the right choice." As the weeks passed, I watched with increasing dread as my family members began their subtle retreat. My mother stopped asking about wedding details. My father became even more elusive than usual. Extended family members who had enthusiastically RSVP'd yes began calling with apologetic excuses. "Your cousin Patricia has a scheduling conflict," my mother informed me. "She will be attending Vanessa's party instead. She hopes you understand." One by one, relatives aligned themselves with Vanessa's celebration rather than mine. The defections hurt, but none as deeply as the growing distance I felt from Samantha. My oldest friend became increasingly difficult to reach, canceling our planned shopping trip for bridesmaid dresses and missing our menu tasting without explanation. "Is everything okay?" I texted her after she missed our third wedding-related appointment. "I have not heard from you much lately." "Sorry, work has been crazy," came her delayed response. "And I have had some family stuff. We will catch up soon." Eric watched with growing concern as my initial excitement about our wedding gave way to anxiety and dread. "We can elope," he offered one night as I tearfully sorted through another round of declined RSVPs. "Just take off somewhere and make it about us, not them." "But that would mean letting them win," I replied. Though the suggestion was tempting, I still hoped they would come to their senses. The final dress fitting should have been a moment of joy, my mother and maid of honor surrounding me with compliments and emotional tears. Instead, I stood alone before the mirror, the seamstress making awkward small talk to fill the silence of the empty room. 2 days before the wedding, my mother called. "We are going to try to make both events," she said, her voice bright with false optimism. "We might be a bit late to your ceremony, but we will try to stop by the reception." "Try to stop by?" I echoed, as if my wedding were an open house or casual get-together, as if their presence were a favor rather than a parental obligation. "Do not bother," I replied, surprising myself with the cold anger in my voice. "Either be there from the beginning, or do not come at all." She sighed again, that familiar sound of disappointment. "You have always been so difficult, Audrey, so unwilling to compromise." The irony of her accusation was so profound that I could only laugh bitterly before ending the call. The night before my wedding arrived with a suffocating sense of finality. Eric stayed at his best friend Thomas's house, honoring the tradition of not seeing the bride before the ceremony. Alone in our apartment, I made final check-in calls to my family members, clinging to a thread of hope that someone would choose me. My father answered with obvious distraction in his voice. "Audrey, I am in the middle of something. Can this wait?" "I am getting married tomorrow, Dad," I reminded him, hating the pleading tone that crept into my voice. "I just wanted to confirm you will be walking me down the aisle." His pause contained volumes. "Your sister's party is in the afternoon, and you know your mother needs help setting up these things. The traffic between venues will be tricky. I might not make it in time for that part, but we'll try to catch the reception." "Try." That word again, so hollow in its false effort. "I see," I said, though my vision was blurring with tears. Thanks for letting me know. My mother offered similar excuses, wrapped in slightly more apologetic language, but arriving at the same conclusion. Vanessa's event took priority. Various aunts, uncles, and cousins texted their regrets, each message another small wound. The call I dreaded most came at 11:30 at night. Samantha's name flashed on my screen, and I answered immediately, desperate for good news. Please tell me you'll be there tomorrow, I said without preamble. The silence on the other end lasted several heartbeats too long. Audrey, I am so sorry, Samantha finally said, her voice wavering. I cannot make it tomorrow. The betrayal hit me with physical force, knocking the air from my lungs. You are my maid of honor. You have been my best friend for 15 years. I know, and I feel terrible, but Vanessa asked me to help coordinate her party, and I already committed. You know how she gets when people back out on her. The pieces suddenly clicked together. How long have you been friends with Vanessa? Another damning silence. We started hanging out a few months ago. She invited me to some parties, introduced me to some important people in the industry. You know, I have been trying to network for that promotion. My sister had deliberately cultivated a friendship with my oldest friend, pulling her into her orbit and away from mine with the practiced ease of someone who had been stealing my connections my entire life. So, you are choosing her engagement party over my wedding, I said flatly. My one day versus another networking opportunity. It is not like that, Samantha protested weakly. I can still come by your reception later if it runs long enough. Do not bother, I replied, echoing my words to my mother. I would rather have empty space beside me than someone who sees me as an afterthought. I ended the call and collapsed onto my bed, sobs tearing through me with such force that my ribs ached. When I could finally breathe again, I called Eric, no longer caring about wedding traditions. Nobody is coming, I told him when he answered, my voice raw from crying. Not my parents, not Samantha. Nobody chose me. Eric was at my door within 20 minutes. Tradition be damned. He held me while I cried, stroking my hair and murmuring reassurances. We still have each other, he reminded me. That is what tomorrow is really about. You and me promising to choose each other every day for the rest of our lives. The rest of them do not matter. But they did matter. Despite my wishes to the contrary, the absence of my family would leave a visible void that no amount of rearranged seating could disguise. The morning of my wedding dawned bright and clear, the perfect October day I had envisioned when we set the date. In my hotel room, I watched the makeup artist and hairstylist exchange concerned glances as they worked in the empty bridal suite. Your bridesmaids running late? The makeup artist asked tentatively. They're not coming, I replied. The words became slightly easier with repetition. It will just be me today. Their pitying looks only deepened my humiliation. I checked my phone compulsively, scrolling through social media to torture myself with evidence of what I was missing and what was being missed at my expense. Vanessa had already posted photos of engagement party preparations, tagging my parents as they helped arrange flowers and set up tables. Samantha appeared in the background of one image, laughing with people who should have been witnessing my vows. For one desperate moment, I considered canceling everything. Why go through with a ceremony that would only highlight how little I mattered to the people who should have cared the most? The thought of walking into that venue alone, facing the curious and pitying stares of Eric's family and friends, made me physically ill. As if sensing my spiraling thoughts, my phone rang with a call from Charlotte, Eric's mother. Audrey, dear, she said when I answered. Eric mentioned there might be some family complications today. Harold and I are on our way to your hotel. No bride should get ready alone on her wedding day. 30 minutes later, my future in-laws arrived with reassuring smiles and practical help. Charlotte stepped seamlessly into the mother of the bride role, adjusting my veil and dabbing her eyes appropriately. Harold kept up a stream of dad jokes so corny they actually made me laugh despite my heartache. You are family now, Charlotte told me as we prepared to leave for the venue. And in this family, we show up for each other. The drive to the venue passed in a blur of anxiety. As we arrived, I peered through the car window at the gathering guests, still foolishly hoping to spot a familiar face from my side. The wedding coordinator met us with a tablet in hand, her professional smile faltering as she processed the situation. "We have 23 empty seats on the bride's side," she said, flipping through her notes. "Should we ask some guests to redistribute?" The question highlighted the physical manifestation of my family's rejection, rows of empty chairs where their support should have been. "Yes," I said, swallowing hard. "Please make it look less obvious." As I waited in the bridal room for the ceremony to begin, Thomas, Eric's best man, knocked gently on the door. "Eric sent me," he explained. "He thought you might need someone to walk you down the aisle." The kindness from virtual strangers contrasted sharply with the absence of those who had known me my entire life. I nodded, unable to speak through the lump in my throat. "I would be honored," Thomas said, offering his arm with a formal bow that somehow lightened the moment. Through the door, I could hear guests being seated, the soft music playing, all the careful plans proceeding despite the gaping hole where my family should have been. I took one last look at my phone, one final check for a message indicating a last-minute change of heart. Nothing. Just social media notifications of more photos from Vanessa's party. More evidence of my family's choice. It was time to walk down the aisle, time to face the reality that on the most important day of my life, not a single person from my past had chosen to be present for my future. The wedding coordinator signaled that it was time. Thomas offered his arm, a stranger stepping into a role that should have belonged to my father. The doors opened, revealing the transformed venue space with flowers, ribbons, and carefully arranged chairs, now evenly filled on both sides thanks to the coordinator's last-minute adjustments. Still, I could feel the absence on my side like a physical ache. The music swelled, and all faces turned toward me. I found Eric's eyes immediately. His steady gaze anchored me as I began the long walk. His expression held so much love that for a moment, I could almost forget the emptiness surrounding me. Almost. Each step felt heavy with the weight of rejection. The guests smiled politely, but I could see the curiosity in their expressions, the unspoken questions about why the bride's side of the family was conspicuously represented by strangers rather than blood relatives. When we reached the altar, Thomas squeezed my hand gently before placing it in Eric's. My soon-to-be husband whispered words only I could hear. "You look beautiful, and I am the luckiest man alive." The celebrant began the ceremony with practiced words about love, commitment, and family that now carried irony. When he spoke of two families joining together, I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing bitterly. What joining? There was only Eric's family here to witness our union. Our vows, which we had written ourselves, took on new meaning in the context of the day's betrayals. Eric's promise to be the family you deserve brought the first tears to my eyes. My vow to choose you every day felt like both a promise to Eric and a rejection of those who had failed to choose me. The exchange of rings, the pronouncement of our marriage, the first kiss as husband and wife, all passed in an emotional blur as we turned to face our guests as a married couple. The applause felt sincere but lopsided, coming primarily from those who had come to support Eric. The reception began with our entrance as husband and wife, the MC valiantly trying to generate enthusiasm despite the half-empty venue. Tables designated for my family sat vacant, decorated centerpieces, and placed cards marking the absence of those who should have occupied those seats. Our first dance became an unexpectedly intimate moment as Eric held me close and whispered continuous reassurance. "This is the beginning of our story," he said as we swayed to the music, "a new family that will never abandon each other." The traditional father-daughter dance had been removed from the schedule at the last minute, creating an awkward gap in the proceedings that the DJ attempted to fill with upbeat music to draw people to the dance floor. Eric's father approached me during this time, formally asking for a dance and a gesture that brought fresh tears to my eyes. "I hope you do not mind the substitution," Harold said as he led me carefully around the floor. "Every bride deserves a special dance on her wedding day." "Thank you," I managed, grateful beyond words for his kindness. Harold's speech during dinner welcomed me to their family with such genuine warmth that I could briefly forget the pain of my own family's absence. Eric's relatives made concerted efforts to introduce themselves, share family stories, and make me feel included in their circle. "We are so happy Eric found you," Charlotte said, squeezing my hand across the table. We have always wanted a daughter. The photographer struggled valiantly with family portraits, arranging Eric's relatives around us while avoiding obvious mention of my missing family members. Every flash of the camera documented not just who was present, but who was conspicuously absent. During a brief moment alone, I could not resist checking my phone, a masochistic impulse to see what my family was doing instead of attending my wedding. Social media provided the answer in painful detail. Photos of my parents beaming beside Vanessa and her fiancé, Jackson, champagne glasses raised in celebration. One particularly painful image showed Samantha with her arm around my sister, both laughing as if they had been friends for years rather than months. "Your sister looks so beautiful," one comment read beneath the photo. What a perfect engagement celebration. No mention of the fact that the date coincided with her sister's wedding. No acknowledgement of the choice that had been made. In the curated reality of social media, Vanessa's event existed in isolation, not as the deliberate counter-programming it actually was. The time came for cutting the cake, another milestone moment typically shared with family. Eric and I approached the three-tiered creation that had been designed to feed guests who had not come. As we posed with the knife, ready for the traditional photo, my phone vibrated in the hidden pocket of my wedding dress. After the cake was cut and pieces were being distributed, I stepped aside to check the notification. A message from my mother glowed on the screen. "We need to talk now." Confused, I scrolled to see what had prompted this urgent communication on my wedding day, only to discover 39 missed calls accumulating over the past 2 hours. My heart raced with sudden fear. Had something happened? Was there an emergency that would explain their absence? The professional mask I had maintained throughout the day began to crack. Eric noticed my expression and immediately came to my side, concern etched on his face. "What is it?" he asked, his arm protective around my waist. "My mom," I said, showing him the screen. "Something must be wrong. They have called 39 times in the last 2 hours." A mixture of emotions crossed Eric's features: concern, anger, suspicion. "Do you want to call her back now?" I hesitated, torn between worry and resentment. If there was a genuine emergency, I should respond. But the timing seemed suspect, coming exactly when Vanessa's party would be winding down. "Not right now," I decided, slipping the phone back into my pocket. "This is our wedding reception. Whatever crisis they are having, they chose to be somewhere else today. They can wait until tomorrow." The decision felt both empowering and terrifying. For the first time, I was not dropping everything to accommodate my family's demands. Yet, the anxiety of not knowing scratched at the back of my mind for the remainder of the reception. As guests began to depart, offering congratulations and well wishes, the reality of what should have been versus what was hit me with renewed force. No tearful hug from my mother, no proud handshake from my father, no inside jokes with Samantha about finally finding my happy ending. Instead, Eric and I thanked his family and friends for coming, accepted their gifts and kind words, and eventually found ourselves alone in the bridal suite with the remnants of our celebration being packed away by venue staff. "What do you think the calls were about?" I asked Eric as we changed out of our wedding clothes, the fairy tale day giving way to an uncertain evening. "I do not know," he admitted. "But I do know that whatever it is, we will handle it together. That is what we promised today, right?" I nodded, trying to focus on the commitment we had made rather than the people who had chosen to miss it. But as we prepared to leave for our hotel, my phone began ringing again. My mother's name flashed on the screen, the 47th call of the day. This time, I answered. "Mom," I said, putting the call on speaker so Eric could hear. "What is going on? Is everyone okay?" Her voice came through, tense and strained. "Audrey, we need you to come home. Right now, there has been a situation." The vagueness of her response triggered immediate suspicion. What kind of situation? Is someone hurt? No, nothing like that. She paused, and I could hear muffled voices in the background. "It is complicated. Just come to the house as soon as you can." "We're supposed to leave for our honeymoon tomorrow morning," I reminded her, anger building beneath my concern. "Our flight is at 7. This cannot wait," she insisted. "Family emergency." The irony of those words was so sharp it could draw blood, a family emergency from people who had not considered my wedding day important enough to attend. Eric's expression darkened as he listened. After I ended the call, he shook his head. This feels like another manipulation. They ignored our wedding, and now they expect us to drop everything for some mysterious emergency. Despite my agreement with his assessment, years of conditioning made it difficult to ignore my mother's summons. What if something really is wrong? Eric sighed, running a hand through his hair. Then we will deal with it. But I am not letting them ruin our honeymoon too. If we go, we set a limit, 1 hour. Then we leave. We spent our wedding night not in romantic celebration, but in intense discussion, ultimately deciding to delay our departure for the honeymoon by 1 day to address whatever family crisis had suddenly emerged. The decision felt like another victory for Vanessa's ability to disrupt my life. But the persistent calls throughout the night made it clear that ignoring the situation was not an option. The next morning, we arrived at my parents' house to find multiple cars in the driveway, including Samantha's. The scene resembled the aftermath of a party, with glasses and plates still scattered across surfaces. Entering the unusually quiet house, we found my parents, Vanessa, Jackson, and Samantha gathered in the living room, all wearing expressions ranging from angry to tearful. My mother rose when she saw us, her face showing strain I had not seen before. "Thank you for coming." "What is the emergency?" I asked, remaining standing with Eric beside me, unwilling to settle in for what increasingly felt like a manufactured crisis. My father cleared his throat. "There was an incident at Vanessa's engagement party yesterday." Vanessa sat with red-rimmed eyes, Jackson's arm around her shoulders. She looked up at me with an expression I could not quite read. "Your sister made an announcement at the party," my mother continued, her voice tight. "She told everyone she was pregnant. That is why she and Jackson had gotten engaged so quickly." I waited for the actual emergency, confused by this revelation. "And she is not," my father said bluntly. After everyone had congratulated them and given gifts specifically for the baby, she admitted she had made it up just to get attention. The room fell into uncomfortable silence as I processed this information. Vanessa had fabricated a pregnancy, announced it at her hastily arranged engagement party that had been deliberately scheduled to conflict with my wedding, then admitted to the lie at the same event. "So, the emergency is that Vanessa lied," I clarified, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "And this required 47 phone calls during my wedding and reception." "You do not understand," my mother said defensively. "This affects the whole family. People are talking. Your father's colleagues were there, my clients. Our reputation is at stake." Of course, their concern was not the manipulative behavior or the hurt caused, but the potential social embarrassment, image over substance, as always in our family. "Why am I here?" I asked. "This seems like an issue between you and Vanessa." "We thought you might have some insight," my father said vaguely. "You have always been the sensible one." Translation: they wanted me to help clean up Vanessa's mess, as I had been doing my entire life. "Let me get this straight," Eric interjected, his voice controlled but tight with anger. "You all skipped our wedding to attend an engagement party where the bride-to-be announced a fake pregnancy, then called us 47 times because you are embarrassed about what your country club friends might think." Put so bluntly, the situation revealed itself in all its dysfunctional absurdity. "It is more complicated than that," my mother protested weakly. "Is it?" I asked. "Because from where I stand, it looks exactly that simple. You chose Vanessa's drama over my wedding, and now you expect me to help manage the fallout." Vanessa finally spoke, her voice small in a way I had never heard before. "I did not mean for it to go this far. I just wanted everyone to be excited for me." "Excited for you." The words escaped before I could contain them. "You scheduled your engagement party on my wedding day deliberately to steal my moment. You were not content with having our parents' attention every other day of my life. You had to take my wedding day, too." My accusation hung in the air, undeniable in its truth. To my surprise, Vanessa did not attempt to deny it. "I am sorry," she said, though the apology lacked depth. "I got carried away." My mother jumped to her defense immediately. Vanessa made a mistake with the pregnancy announcement, but that does not excuse your tone, Audrey. She is going through a difficult time right now. The familiar pattern reasserted itself, Vanessa's actions, however egregious, being minimized, while any reaction from me was characterized as excessive or unreasonable. My tone, I repeated incredulously. You missed my wedding for a party that turned out to be built on a lie, and you were concerned about my tone. My father shifted uncomfortably. What is done is done. We need to focus on damage control now. Can we count on your discretion about this situation? Not an apology, not an acknowledgement of the pain they had caused, just a request for my continued compliance in maintaining the family's carefully constructed facade. I turned to Samantha, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. And you? Was networking worth missing your best friend's wedding? She had the grace to look ashamed. I made a mistake, Audrey. Vanessa introduced me to some important people in the industry, and I got caught up in it all. I should have been there for you. Yes, you should have. I agreed, the hurt still raw. 15 years of friendship, and you threw it away for what? A chance to mingle with my sister's crowd. It was not like that, she protested weakly. Then what was it like? Eric asked, his protective instincts clearly triggered by the room full of people who had hurt his new wife. Samantha looked down, unable to meet my eyes. Vanessa said you would understand, that you were so caught up in wedding planning, you probably would not even notice if I skipped it. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. And you believed that, after 15 years of knowing me? The conversation continued to unravel, revealing more painful truths. It emerged that Vanessa had been systematically working to alienate me from family and friends for months, making subtle comments to sow doubt about my loyalty or affection, positioning herself as the more accessible alternative in our social circle. My mother produced screenshots of messages Vanessa had sent about me, claiming I had said hurtful things about various family members that I had never uttered. My father admitted that Vanessa had convinced him I did not actually want him to walk me down the aisle, but felt obligated to ask. Samantha confessed that Vanessa had told her I had been complaining about her lack of support as maid of honor. The web of manipulations was so intricate, so carefully constructed, that I felt dizzy trying to process it all. My entire relationship with my family and oldest friend had been poisoned by deliberate misinformation, and none of them had bothered to verify anything with me directly. Why would you believe all this without ever asking me? I demanded, tears of anger and hurt filling my eyes. You have always been so independent, my mother said, as if that explained their willingness to accept lies about me. And Vanessa seemed so certain. The conversation continued in circles, with half-hearted apologies that centered more on their embarrassment than my pain. No one seemed to fully grasp or acknowledge the magnitude of what they had done by missing my wedding. Their concern remained focused on the social implications of Vanessa's fake pregnancy announcement, not the deliberate sabotage of what should have been the happiest day of my life. After an hour of this emotional merry-go-round, Eric gently touched my arm. We should go. Our flight is early tomorrow. The reminder of our honeymoon plans, now constrained because of this family drama, rekindled my anger. Yes, we have a honeymoon to prepare for. The honeymoon that follows the wedding none of you attended. You cannot still be angry about that, my mother said dismissively. We have apologized, and we have a real situation to deal with here. Her words crystallized everything wrong with our family dynamic. My feelings, my experiences, my wedding day were always secondary, always less important than whatever crisis Vanessa had manufactured. I am done, I said quietly, the words bringing an unexpected sense of peace. I am done being the afterthought in this family. I am done being reliable, sensible Audrey, who will always understand, always forgive, always accommodate everyone else's needs while mine are ignored. We left amid protests and demands to stay and help resolve the situation. In the car, the emotional dam finally broke, and I sobbed with the accumulated grief of not just my ruined wedding day, but a lifetime of being the less favored child. They will never change, I told Eric between sobs. They will never see me. He drove in silence for a while, allowing me the space to process my emotions. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "I think we need to consider taking some distance from your family. This is not healthy, Audrey. What they did goes beyond thoughtlessness. It was cruel." The truth of his assessment resonated within me. For the first time, I allowed myself to see my family not as I wished they were, but as they actually were. People who consistently prioritized Vanessa's wants over my needs, who enabled her manipulative behavior because it was easier than confronting it, who had failed in the most fundamental parental duty of showing up for their child's important moments. The realization was both devastating and liberating. I did not have to keep trying to earn love that had always been conditionally given. I did not have to keep explaining away their hurtful actions. I could choose myself, just as they had repeatedly chosen Vanessa. "You are right," I said, finally wiping away tears. "I need some distance to figure out what kind of relationship I can have with them going forward, if any." The decision felt monumental, like stepping off a familiar path into unknown territory. But as Eric's hand found mine across the center console, I knew I was not walking that new path alone. The 2 weeks following our return from a honeymoon shortened by family drama were some of the darkest of my life. Despite the beautiful beaches and romantic dinners, the shadow of rejection had followed us to our paradise destination. Each couple's activity reminded me that while Eric's family had fully embraced me, my own had discarded me on what should have been a sacred day. I alternated between numbing depression and burning anger, unable to find equilibrium. Eric watched me with growing concern, offering support without pushing, giving me space to process while ensuring I knew I was not alone. "I think I need professional help," I admitted one evening as we sat on our apartment balcony, the weight of unprocessed emotions becoming too heavy to bear alone. This goes beyond just being upset about the wedding. This is 32 years of feeling unwanted. Eric's relief was visible. "I think that is a great idea. Would you like me to help you find someone?" His support without judgment gave me the courage to take the next step. Within days, I had my first appointment with Dr. Lillian Foster, a therapist specializing in family trauma. "Tell me about your family," she invited during our initial session. The story poured out of me, years of living in Vanessa's shadow, the consistent message that my achievements were expected while hers were exceptional, the pattern of my needs being sacrificed for hers, culminating in the ultimate rejection of my wedding day. "What you are describing sounds like emotional neglect," Dr. Foster observed. "Your parents consistently failed to provide the emotional support and recognition you needed and deserved, particularly in contrast to the attention given to your sister." Having a name for what I had experienced was unexpectedly powerful. It was not just in my head. It was not my being too sensitive or difficult, as my mother had always claimed. It was a real form of psychological harm that had shaped my sense of self-worth. "The first step toward healing is establishing boundaries," Dr. Foster explained, "which might be particularly challenging given your family's expectation that you will always accommodate their needs." That Sunday, I declined the weekly family dinner for the first time in years. My mother's response was predictably guilt-inducing. "But it is tradition," she protested over the phone. "Everyone will be disappointed if you do not come." "I need some time," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "Eric and I are still settling into married life." The lie was easier than the truth, that I could not bear to sit across from people who had collectively decided my wedding was less important than Vanessa's hastily arranged engagement party. To my surprise, establishing that first boundary felt liberating rather than guilt-inducing. Each small act of prioritizing my needs over family expectations became a reclamation of personal power that had been surrendered long ago. Eric's family stepped into the void left by my family's emotional absence. Charlotte called regularly with genuine interest in my life. Harold sent dad jokes via text that made me smile even on difficult days. Their consistent, unconditional support showed me what healthy family relationships could look like. "We are having a small gathering next weekend," Charlotte mentioned during one call. "Nothing fancy, just family dinner. We would love for you and Eric to come." The contrast between the warmth of this invitation and the obligation-laden summons from my own mother was striking. One felt like a gift, the other a demand. We began creating new traditions to replace those tainted by family dysfunction, Sunday brunches with friends instead of tension-filled family dinners, holiday celebrations focused on joy rather than performance, small but meaningful rituals that honored our relationship rather than maintaining appearances. 3 weeks into therapy, I felt strong enough to confront Vanessa directly. We met at a neutral cafe, away from the family home where power dynamics were entrenched. "I want to understand why," I said after we had ordered coffee. "Why have you consistently tried to overshadow every important moment in my life?" To my surprise, Vanessa did not immediately deny or deflect. Instead, she stared into her coffee cup for a long moment before responding. "I have always been jealous of you," she admitted, her voice uncharacteristically small. "You are so smart, so capable. Everything comes easily to you. School, career, relationships. I have had to work so hard just to get noticed." The confession stunned me into silence. This did not align with my experience of our family at all. "That is not how I remember it," I said carefully. "Mom and Dad have always preferred you. They have always shown up for you in ways they never did for me." Vanessa looked genuinely surprised. "They pushed me because they had to. You were the natural achiever. I was the one who needed the extra attention just to keep up." Our perceptions of our shared childhood were so divergent that we might as well have grown up in different families. Yet beneath her justifications, I detected the core truth. Her actions had been deliberate, calculated to diminish my moments of recognition. "Even if that were true," I said, "it does not justify scheduling your engagement party on my wedding day." "That was cruel, Vanessa. You knew exactly what you were doing." She had the grace to look ashamed. "I knew. I could not stand the thought of everyone focusing on you for once. It has always been about you being the smart one, the responsible one. Wedding days are supposed to be about the pretty one." The petty insecurity behind her actions was almost more hurtful than malice would have been. My wedding day, my one chance to be the center of attention in my family, had been sabotaged because my sister could not tolerate me having a single day in the spotlight. "You hurt me deeply," I told her, my voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "Not just with the wedding, but with years of undermining my relationships, spreading lies about me, making me constantly doubt my place in our family." "I am sorry," she said, though the apology felt more like a formality than genuine remorse. "I got carried away." "Carried away? You deliberately destroyed one of the most important days of my life. That goes beyond getting carried away." Our conversation continued in this vein, with Vanessa offering superficial acknowledgments without demonstrating true understanding of the harm she had caused. By the end, it was clear that while she could verbally recognize her actions were wrong, she lacked the emotional depth to truly empathize with my pain. I left that meeting with the realization that reconciliation with Vanessa would be limited at best. Some wounds were too deep, some patterns too ingrained to fully resolve. The best I could hope for was a cordial but distant relationship with appropriate boundaries to prevent future harm. My parents proved even less receptive to honest conversation about family dynamics. When I finally gathered the courage to address their absence at my wedding directly, their responses followed predictable patterns. "We were in an impossible position," my mother insisted. "We tried our best to make both events." "That is the point," I countered. "There should not have been a choice. You should have told Vanessa that my wedding date was non-negotiable, that you would be attending as my parents, and that she needed to reschedule." My father looked uncomfortable but defensive. "Hindsight is 20/20, Audrey. We made a judgment call in a difficult situation. A judgment call that communicated very clearly where I stand in your priorities," I pointed out. "Actions speak louder than words, and your actions showed me exactly how much I matter to you." The conversation devolved into familiar territory, my parents minimizing my feelings, defending their choices, and ultimately suggesting I was being unreasonable for continuing to be hurt by their actions. No real accountability, no genuine remorse, just the expectation that I would eventually get over it and return to my assigned role as the understanding, accommodating daughter. After multiple similar encounters, I made the difficult decision to take an extended break from family contact. The constant cycle of hurt, confrontation, dismissal, and grudging half apologies was damaging my mental health and impeding the healing process I had begun in therapy. I need some time and space. I informed my parents via email, unable to face another circular conversation. I will reach out when I am ready to reconnect. Their responses were predictably self-centered, focusing on their pain at being cut off rather than reflecting on the behaviors that had led to this point. But for the first time, I did not allow their emotions to override mine. Their discomfort with my boundaries was not more important than my need for psychological safety. With the emotional energy previously consumed by family drama now liberated, I found space to rebuild other aspects of my life. I joined a book club and made new friends who knew me only as Audrey, the book lover, not Audrey, the lesser sister. I threw myself into a challenging work project and earned recognition that felt genuinely earned rather than constantly compared to someone else's achievements. Samantha reached out multiple times, her messages becoming increasingly apologetic as the reality of missing my wedding for superficial networking opportunities sank in. I responded politely but maintained distance, unsure if our friendship could ever fully recover from such a fundamental betrayal. The first holiday season as a married couple arrived, bringing with it the expected pressure to participate in family traditions. Instead, Eric and I accepted his parents' invitation to spend Thanksgiving at their lake house. The celebration was relaxed, joyful, and completely free of the undercurrents of competition and comparison that had characterized every family gathering of my childhood. "Is it always like this?" I asked Charlotte as we prepared dessert together. "Like what, dear?" "So peaceful, so genuinely happy." She considered the question thoughtfully. "Not always. We have our moments of tension like any family. But we try to remember that the relationship is more important than being right or getting our way." Such a simple concept, yet so foreign to my experience of family dynamics. The contrast helped crystallize what had been missing all my life: unconditional love and acceptance rather than performance-based approval. As the new year approached, my mother made her first serious attempt at reconciliation, sending a carefully worded letter acknowledging that missing my wedding had hurt me deeply and expressing a desire to repair our relationship. The apology, while still lacking full accountability, represented more self-reflection than I had previously seen from her. I responded with cautious openness, agreeing to a limited, structured reconnection on my terms. Our relationship would need to be rebuilt slowly, with clear boundaries and expectations, if it was to survive in any meaningful form. 1 year after our wedding, Eric and I celebrated our anniversary by hosting a vow renewal ceremony. Unlike our original wedding, this celebration was attended only by people who had demonstrated their genuine care and support throughout our first year of marriage. Eric's family, my new friends from the book club, supportive colleagues, and carefully selected extended family members who had maintained independent relationships with me despite the family schism. Conspicuously absent were my parents and Vanessa, who had been invited but with clear expectations about respectful behavior. They had declined, citing discomfort with the restrictions placed on their attendance, which had simply been requests to acknowledge the pain caused by their previous actions and commit to supportive behavior going forward. Standing before our chosen family, reciting vows that had gained deeper meaning through the challenges of our first year together, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for most of my life. The ache of my biological family's rejection remained, but it no longer defined me. "You have shown me what real family means," I told Eric during our private moment after the ceremony. "Not blood or obligation, but choice and consistent love." Therapy had become a cornerstone of my healing journey. Dr. Foster's guidance helped me recognize and process the deep-seated wounds of childhood emotional neglect, untangling the complex web of family dynamics that had shaped my self-perception. "Your worth is not determined by your parents' ability to see it," she reminded me during a particularly difficult session. "Their limitations are not your deficiencies." This simple truth became a mantra during moments when old insecurities threatened to resurface. The little girl desperately seeking parental approval would always be part of me, but she no longer drove my decisions or defined my self-worth. Over time, I established limited, carefully structured contact with my parents. Our relationship now existed within clear boundaries that I enforced consistently. Sunday dinners were no longer mandatory obligations but occasional opt-in events that I attended only when emotionally prepared for the dynamics involved. My mother, to her credit, made gradual efforts to adjust to this new normal. Small gestures, like asking about my work or remembering details about my life, suggested a dawning recognition of her role in our estrangement. My father remained more resistant to change, still expecting accommodation rather than offering it. But even he showed occasional moments of growth. "I should have been there to walk you down the aisle," he admitted during one rare moment of vulnerability almost 14 months after the wedding. "I made the wrong choice that day." The acknowledgement, though belated, offered a small measure of healing. Not enough to erase the hurt, but enough to create space for a different kind of relationship moving forward. Vanessa's path proved more complicated. Her engagement to Jackson ended 3 months after the infamous party, the relationship unable to withstand the scrutiny that followed her pregnancy deception. This precipitated another family crisis in which I was expected to help manage the fallout, a role I now firmly declined. "I love you as my sister," I told her during one difficult conversation. "But I cannot be your emotional support person right now. We both need to work on ourselves separately." Setting this boundary, impossible for me before therapy and the wedding debacle, marked significant growth in my ability to prioritize my own well-being. Vanessa's reaction was predictably dramatic, but ultimately less impactful than it would have been in the past. Her tears, accusations, and attempts at manipulation simply did not move me the way they once had. Samantha and I eventually rebuilt a version of our friendship, though it bore little resemblance to our former closeness. Coffee meetings every few months replaced daily texts and weekly dinners. The betrayal of my wedding day had permanently altered the foundation of trust between us, but enough of our shared history remained valuable to maintain a modified connection. "I made a terrible mistake," she acknowledged during our first reconciliation meeting. "I got caught up in Vanessa's world and lost sight of what really matters." "Why did you believe her over me?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for months. "She has this way of making everything she says sound absolutely true," Samantha admitted. "And I think I was a little dazzled by her lifestyle, her connections. It was stupid and shallow, and I am so sorry." The honesty of her response made forgiveness possible, though complete restoration of trust remained a work in progress. Professional success came as an unexpected side effect of my emotional healing. Freed from the constant anxiety of seeking familial approval, I approached work projects with newfound confidence and creativity. A major presentation that would have previously triggered weeks of stress and over-preparation now showcased my natural abilities without the shadow of anticipated criticism. "We are promoting you to senior manager," my boss announced 6 months after the wedding debacle. "Your leadership on the Henderson project was exceptional." The achievement felt sweeter for being recognized on its own merits, not immediately compared to someone else's accomplishments or diminished by faint praise. Eric and I began discussing starting our own family, conversations tinged with both excitement and trepidation. The prospect of becoming parents ourselves brought all the family dynamics issues into sharp relief. "I am afraid I will repeat the patterns," I confessed to Eric one night. "What if I do not know how to parent without favoritism or conditional love?" "The fact that you are worried about it means you are already different," he pointed out. "Your parents never questioned their approach. You are already breaking the cycle by being conscious of it." This insight, reinforced by Dr. Foster in subsequent therapy sessions, helped transform my fear into determination. I would not repeat the patterns that had caused so much pain. Our children, when they came, would be loved for who they were, not for how well they performed or how perfectly they fit parental expectations. Eric's parents continued to demonstrate what healthy family relationships could look like, welcoming me fully into their circle without the constant tests and comparisons that had characterized my childhood home. Charlotte's maternal warmth filled some of the void left by my own mother's emotional distance, while Harold's steady, unconditional support showed me what fatherly love could be. "Family is who shows up," Charlotte told me once when I expressed gratitude for their acceptance. Not just for the big moments, but for all the small ones in between. We show up for the people we love. Period. This simple philosophy, so consistently demonstrated in their actions, became a cornerstone of my own approach to relationships. I began to evaluate connections not by longevity or blood ties, but by the fundamental question: does this person show up for me? And do I show up for them? The wedding dress that had witnessed my moment of deepest rejection remained preserved in its garment bag for months, too painful to look at, but too significant to discard. On our first anniversary, in a private ceremony of personal closure before the vow renewal, I finally removed it from storage. This dress saw me at my most vulnerable, I told Eric as I ran my fingers over the delicate lace. It witnessed the moment I realized that the family I was born into would never be the family I needed. It also saw the beginning of the family we are creating together, he reminded me gently. The one based on choice rather than obligation. We donated the dress to a charity that provided wedding attire to brides who could not afford it, transforming an artifact of pain into an opportunity for someone else's joy. The symbolic act of letting go marked another step in my healing journey. As our second year of marriage began, the sharp edges of wedding day trauma had softened somewhat, though the experience had permanently altered my understanding of family and belonging. The loss of what should have been remained real, but it had been balanced by the discovery of what could be when relationships were built on mutual respect and genuine care rather than obligation and performance. The family that matters isn't always the one you're born into, I explained to a friend who asked about my limited contact with my parents. It's the one that shows up for your cake-cutting moments, the one that celebrates your joys and supports you through difficulties without keeping score or making comparisons. This hard-won wisdom, purchased through tears, therapy, and difficult conversations, had become the foundation of a life more authentic and fulfilling than the one I had lived before. The journey from rejection to reclamation was not linear and certainly not complete. But each day brought new opportunities to choose self-respect over approval-seeking, boundaries over obligation, and genuine connection over performative harmony. The little girl who had spent decades trying to earn the love that should have been freely given was finally at peace, not because she had received what she had always sought, but because she had found the courage to stop seeking it from sources incapable of providing it. In its place, she had discovered something more valuable: the ability to recognize, appreciate, and reciprocate love that came without conditions or comparisons. Have you ever had to rebuild your sense of family after a painful rejection? Leave a comment below sharing your experience or any advice you might have for others going through similar situations. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and self-discovery. Remember, the family that truly matters is the one that chooses to show up for you, even when it is difficult. Thank you for being part of my healing journey by listening, and I hope my story helps you feel less alone in yours.